thank you so much to taking time to be part of our school inaugural Hispanic Heritage Professional Roundtable. Our moderator for this tonight is Jada Figna, is the president of the World Language Club, and the vice president of the World Language Club is Chandler Nankumar.
Thank you, Ms. Alakwa. And I'd like to thank all of the participants tonight for joining us. So I'm going to introduce all of you, and after I say your name, you can just give a little bit of a bio about yourself. So first we have the Professor of Anthropology at Rowan University, Dr. Maria Rosado.
Hi, good evening, everybody. You can hear me okay, right? Yes. All right, well, I would like to thank you also and everybody organizing, Polly and all the participants, and of course the students for this opportunity. I think it's great to be able to share our experiences with each other. So I'm gonna, obviously we're gonna talk more later, but as to what I do or who I am a native Chilean. I am a dual citizen. Actually, I have my dual citizenship with Chile, very proud of that, and my Hispanic heritage and being Latina. And also I'm a US citizen, very proud to have grown up in this country. And so I'm very much bicultural, and I wanna share that because that is what has shaped my experience here as well, and what I do. And in a way, I think it shaped what I wanted to do as a student in college. I became an anthropologist because I was very interested in diversity. So I am a professor of anthropology. I'm also the chair of the Sociology and Anthropology department in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. And my work actually is in forensic anthropology and bioarchaeology. And if you have heard of that, you probably know it deals with dead people. So I study peoples of the past, and I study demographics and diseases and all kinds of things that have to deal with peoples in the past, including mummies and mostly skeletal remains. I'm very interested in Native Americans of the Andean region, and in fact, I worked in Chile. Until COVID, I was going there practically every year with students to a museum in northern Chile, where in fact Ms. Alakwa is from, is the Museo Arqueológico de La Serena. And I have an arrangement with them. It has been a wonderful arrangement to be able to bring students to do that work, to do research with me. And so as soon as the COVID ends, the restrictions end, I hope to get back over there. And then at Rowan, I have been there 29 years. This is my 29th year. And if all goes well, I'll be there another 7 years. And then that will be it for me. But in the meantime, I'm having a great time working in my department. I enjoy very much what I do. I love teaching. I absolutely love teaching. That's my passion. And of course, research. I do a lot of research with students. And again, my work is in bioarchaeology and forensic anthropology, but I am an anthropologist, and I became that. It's gonna be, I'm sure, part of our conversation, what led us to our professions, but just as a segue, it's because I'm very much interested in people, very much interested in cultures and peoples around the world. So that's just I think I went too much, but anyway, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Dr. Rosado. Next, we have the Professor of Chemical Engineering, Dr. Zaneta Gephart.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I am so privileged to be here this evening, and I hope you do this every year and celebrate the heritage of all of the peoples in the United States. That is one of the great things in this country, that we all can share and build and see the wonderfulness that comes from having diversity in all aspects of our professions and our life and our personal life. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I am a professor of chemical engineering, and at Rowan, I've also been director and associate dean of engineering. I'm a registered professional engineer in Delaware, and I consult on that basis on data analysis and the statistical design of experiments, which is really important in chemical and pharmaceutical companies. I've also had the privilege to work with engineering programs and help engineering programs become accredited all throughout Latin America. as Vice President of the Latin America Consortium of Engineering Institutions. And that was a real pleasure and privilege. I also am active in my community some. I've chaired operating councils for the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. And I have served as chair and on boards of the YWCA and Girls Inc. of Delaware. Currently, I serve on the advisory committee of the Deck State Federal Credit Union and the Egopo Theater Company in Philadelphia. I think we all have an incredibly important opportunity to contribute to our community. I think it's really important to support all aspects of culture that build our humanity and our citizenship, and the arts are a real important part of that. My family and I came from Cuba as refugees when I was 10 years old, and I am being Latina, being from Cuba is who I am, but I am a proud citizen by choice of the United States of America. I am a mom of 2 outstanding adult children, of which I'm very proud. And that's a really important thing that I do as well.
Thank you, Dr. Gephart. And next we have Research Associate at Thomas Jefferson University, Mrs. Eileen Kohler.
Hi, I think I'm the baby of the group. I feel that my CV is going to be very, very short compared to what my other panelists have done, but I'm a Chilean. I was born in Chile. I came to the US 9 years ago. Wow. To do a 1-year postdoc that turned into a 3-year postdoc at UC San Diego, and then turned into another 3-year postdoc here at Drexel in Philadelphia. And now I'm in Thomas Jefferson University as a research associate in neuroscience. I'm a neuroscientist. I'm very early in my career, so that's what we can say. I work in stroke now. I used to work in spinal cord injury before, all animal models. And currently I am applying to my green card. So I'm not a US permanent resident yet, but I'm working on it. And in my perspective, I came to the US for 1 year as a way to see a little bit about the world, and then stayed a little bit longer and a little bit longer because this country gives you so many opportunities. So basically I'm trying to also juggle my dual heritage, because I have a daughter that is now Chilean and American, and I have to deal with that and learn how to teach her how to deal with that. So hope I can share my experience with you guys.
Thank you. And then lastly, we have Principal/Vice Principal of Laboratory Outreach Solutions, Mr. Steven Serrano.
Hi, my name is Steve Serrano. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I attended Temple University for undergrad studies, and I went to Wharton Business School for graduate studies. My parents are both from Puerto Rico, even though I was born and raised here. I have over 35 years of experience in working in clinical laboratories, and that includes setting them up from scratch, designing them, setting up all the quality management systems that are associated with it to keep them in compliance. I founded my business now, Laboratory Outreach Solutions, and I started that business in 2009. So what we do is we partner with hospitals, and I help them manage their laboratory outreach program. I developed a web-based online ordering system, and I also, as part of my system, it also has a interface engine. I don't want to get too technical, but what it allows us to do is it allows the hospitals to share their information with their community via the internet. It's like a web portal, but it also has clinical value. We try to add clinical value to the lab data. So this way it allows the physicians to make a more informed decision as opposed to kind of being reactive. It's a more proactive stance. That's basically what I do without kind of going into a long, extensive explanation. Thank you.
Thank you all for your introductions. So for this first question, it's open to all panelists. Aside from academics, what is the most important thing or advice high school students need to know in order to be successful in a career?
Should we go in order or first come, first served?
First come, first serve for this one.
Okay, I can go first then. So I was thinking a lot about this question. And I think what I can suggest, and I wish somebody told me, is collaborate and learn what others do. Always. It never takes more space, and really learn what your colleagues are doing, because you never know when you're going to find some connection that is going to take you to that next step. Keep a super open mind and never miss an opportunity to do something different. I sometimes was thinking, why am I going to go to this? There's nothing I can learn. There's nothing I can give. You can always take something from a weird interaction. So basically do it. Go.
That's a good one. Besides academics, I think the most important things are perseverance. That I have found to be probably the single most important thing throughout my life. Respect for yourself and others, relationships, and an ability to adapt. Being successful seldom happens in a vacuum. When I think back to my career path and my life, it's just full, laden with people that have helped me and have given me a hand up.
Hi, this is Steve. If I can just add, I like to use a formula, and that normally, what I normally, I guess, advise is when preparation meets opportunity, success happens. So the key is to constantly prepare yourself, so when that opportunity happens, you'll have success. So it's just my formula that seemed to work, and that's how I raised that's the same formula I use when raising my children.
Well, those are very wonderful ones. I didn't have any of those. I have others, but they're wonderful, and definitely I completely agree. I would tell, yes, the students, many of the things you have mentioned, all the things you have mentioned, but for me, it's also curiosity, that you have to have a sense of curiosity. And if I may use the expression, a sense of adventure, to be able to throw yourself into something. And I've had that opportunity, and what I do is really been adventuresome. I mean, with some preparation, of course, you don't want to be totally in the blind out there. But definitely, be curious. And yes, obviously work with others and learn from others. Most of what I learned obviously has come from others. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity, the experiences that people have shared with me, their learning, any experience, very grateful for that. But what led me to do what I do is because I'm very curious, and I like to solve problems too. I like a good challenge, and I like to figure out things. But I would tell, students in a career, just be, prepared, prepare yourself, be curious, be able to work with others. You have to be able to work with others and share the responsibilities, and have really good listening skills. We need to be able to listen to people as well, because that often, when you work in groups, sometimes there's some person that's more dominant than us and they don't listen to anybody else, but everybody can be contributing. And we find that as we teach, when we teach our students to do group work, I see that they learn much more when they're together, working together. So those are things, but I agree, obviously, with what you have said, all of you have said before, wonderful things, absolutely.
If no one has anything else to add, for our next question, we would all like to know, how has being Hispanic affected your experiences in each of your respective job fields?
Well, for me, it's, when I started in graduate school with anthropology, as an undergraduate, I studied anthropology. It was my minor. And then in my senior year, I decided I was going to become an anthropologist, but it was too late. So I decided to go to graduate school for that. But the fact that I was I was the only Hispanic in my cohort. In fact, there were no other Hispanics until I was about to graduate, earn my PhD, when finally there were students coming who were from the Caribbean. I believe they were from the Dominican Republic. But before that, I was the only one. And the people that I work with worked, in fact, in Mexico, and it benefited me because I speak Spanish. They invited me to do work in Mexico. But even there, I was pretty much the only one, and I always found it really interesting at the time. I'm talking way back in 87, 88, and 89, that I'm working with all these people, non-Hispanics. They were white people, and I found that fascinating that they were so interested in going to, in this case, Latin and Native American cultures, in this case of Mexico. So I felt alone at times, very alone, but at the same time, because then there were changes in my research, I went back to Chile in 87, and I found the museum, and I thought, well, this would be a good way for me to reconnect with my culture of my birth and contribute here. And then I will be also with people, that I share some culture with. Not that I didn't share culture with people growing up. I had wonderful experiences growing up in Patterson, very diverse. I loved it. I had all kinds of friends from all over Latin America, and then at Rutgers from all over the world. So I had that experience. So when I went to anthropology, I did find it interesting that I was the only Hispanic for the longest time. There were no Hispanics doing anthropology at the time, at least at Rutgers University, where I studied. So I just found that interesting. And what's interesting then to follow that up is still pretty much, there's a question I think that later, but my field is still pretty much dominated by one group. It hasn't changed very much. So anyway, that was my experience.
So for me, I guess the biggest thing that my Hispanic background has bring is trying to find out the solution without many resources. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm in my office, and of course, I'm so sorry. I'm in my office, and it decided that I'm no longer here. So that's being Hispanic. So for me, basically, it's been trying to find a solution with very little resources. Back in Chile, when I did my undergrad, you didn't really have any opportunities unless you really looked them, because there was no real money to do any science. And that has helped me a lot here, being able to do what I want to do with very little resources. If that's something that being Hispanic can bring to you, be resourceful.
Being Hispanic is simply who I am. So it affects everything I do. It's in my DNA, and it's just what I bring to the table. So I bring with me in anything I do a whole culture and language, an additional frame of reference, an additional perspective, and I think that's been very valuable throughout all of my life. It's given me insights into the challenges that people face, because being a woman and being Hispanic and being an engineer has presented some challenges in my profession. And I think we need to admit that we still are not where we were dreaming about being, certainly when I was a young woman, in terms of equity for all groups in the United States. So that certainly has been that. But it's made me a really keen observer of people. It's made me very effective in many ways because I have this different perspective and frame of reference. So it's a real joy to have access to another culture and to be able to combine aspects of the cultures in which I live and the culture from which I come. And that's been a real gift.
By the time I reached my field, growing up in North Philadelphia the way I did, I was in tune with reality at a very young age. So, when survival is part of your DNA, then you understand at a young age, being Puerto Rican, that you had to be twice as good as your classmates or your coworkers. Failure was not an option. So for me, I just did whatever it took to be the best that I can be, and just pretty much, if it was when I was in school, if it meant out studying someone or at work, just outworking them. And that pretty much always kept me in a position where I didn't feel inferior. Because as you know, if you're in a workplace and you're that valuable to your employer, they treat you a little different.
Okay, so for our next question, this is lightly touched on, but what makes up the majority of the demographic in your field? And we can start with Dr. Gephart.
Well, the majority of my field is white male, and it continues to be that. And certainly when I was a young woman, as a young graduate, I actually was very sure that by the year 2000, we would certainly be more egalitarian and have 50% of the profession be women. What's interesting is that it varies by discipline. So for example, there's more women and minorities in biomedical, environmental, and chemical engineering. Not so much in mechanical and electrical. So it really varies, but the largest number is about 27% women, and I think something in the vicinity of 12 or 13 Hispanic. So we have a long way to go.
If no one else had anything else to add to that question, what has been the greatest challenge for any of you that you faced in any point in your career?
Actually, can I add to the last question, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I had mentioned this earlier, but in anthropology has a history of white domination. It has been like that. Even the women who worked in anthropology early in the 1900s were not really looked at as much as the males who contributed to the field, even though they contributed equally, and if not more. And it has taken a very long time in anthropology to see not only more women, but more minorities. And that has been changing. In other words, it's been still dominated by it's mostly white people. Over 60% of us anthropologists in the US are of white ancestry. That has been changing because graduate schools have been making major efforts even since the time I was in graduate school to actually recruit people, and anthropologists are recruited from around the world. So that has changed things, but from here in the US, you still have a majority of the people of white ancestry. But it is changing again because of recruitment efforts.
So with this question, I'm sorry, you can go.
I think one of the larger and more important challenges that we all have is to really view our participation, not so much as being fair to us and doing the right thing for us, but because we have something to add, because what we know and where we come from actually benefits the profession and it makes it better for everyone. And I think that's a challenge that is important for us to address. And these things are, they're a relay race. They're not a sprint. So you do your race and you hand the baton over, and it takes a long time. But to take the position that we bring something very valuable to the table, that our presence and our contribution benefits culture, benefits the profession, benefits the community, and really see it that way. And yes, the fair thing to do is to give everyone a chance, and that's also true. But that's not all there is to our participation. And I think seeing that and living that way and coming into meetings with that perspective, I think is a challenge for most of us. I know it certainly has been a challenge for me, but it gets easier.
If I may share my experience, we'll start then to answer this question in graduate school particularly. And for me, it was how women were viewed in graduate school who were pregnant and had children. Because I started graduate school 1 week before my son was born. I found out I was pregnant with my son a few days before I learned that I had a full scholarship to graduate school. I had a full scholarship. I applied and I earned it because of my grades. And then I found out I was pregnant. So I went to graduate school because I had obviously the support of a wonderful husband, my husband, Victor, and his family and my family. I was able to do that, and I was able to bring my baby to class. But a challenge was that in those times, and in a way it still is here, a little bit here and there, because we're not equal with women in our treatment of women. It was unheard of that there would be pregnant women in the graduate program, and much less have children with them, but I did it anyway, and there were others as well. Never mind the breastfeeding, that was a no-no, that is nonsense, of course, that has to change. But I remember all that, and I remember feeling that, but I kept going. I had my goal. I'm going to earn a PhD. I love anthropology. I'm not going to let anybody tell me no. And I did have people. They were challenges, and they were people who said, no, you can't do this. You will not be able to do this. And I said, well, keep telling me that because I'm going to prove you wrong. And I did. But it wasn't what I really wanted to do, prove anybody wrong. I just wanted to do this because I wanted to learn. But it was a challenge to deal with those attitudes, very, very machista attitudes at times, very negative, narrow-minded attitudes of the late 80s and the 90s. Things started to change in the 2000s much more. But that was a challenge. And then, of course, balancing family and my studies. Again, I was able to do it because of my family. But I had to, like everybody else in graduate school, we have to work very, very hard. And so my applause and my heart goes out to all the women and to all the men who actually do this. And some of them are single. We have a lot of single parents who do this, and that we don't say anything about them. They get lost in the shuffle of everything. And so people do great sacrifices to become what they are and to continue to evolve and become who they are. So I have to admit that I had great professors, and then I had the detractors and I had the negative ones, but I decided that since I was gonna do this, I wanted to do this, and I had the support of my family, whom I love very much. I did it. And here I am, decades later, trying to help my students become what they want to become, and never ever saying to them, no, you can't do this. Because I was told that. I was told that also as an undergraduate. I was told, no, you can't do that. And for a variety of reasons, was it because of my name? Was it because I speak Spanish? Well, what was it? But I was told that. So I grew up in a time when there were still these biases out there, very strong biases against many people. And unfortunately, there still are, and the inequities are still out there. We see it even with access to minority students today. We are very undiversified. At Rowan University, we talk about it all the time. The professoria are not that diversified. I mean, look at, Zaneta and I, and then a few others, right? I think are Hispanic or Latino or Latinx. And so that I think was a challenge for me. And I thought, well, as you mentioned tonight, my presence there and being able to share these experiences actually helps everybody else. Because our job, right, for all of us who are educators or who are going to go into that, we want to make sure that other people reach their potentials. We're not there to oppress them because they're women, because they're a different gender, because they have children, because they're married or they're not married, whatever it is, we're not there for that. But the 70s, the 80s, some of the 90s were very different, so I bring that experience and I share it with my students. I tell them these stories. I tell them about growing up, what happened when I was growing up, when I was discriminated and mistreated as a child, even in 7th and 8th grade. I tell them that. I want them to know that these experiences were valuable. I learned from them. I didn't like going through them, but they taught me. And they told me that I needed to really reach out to people. And that's why I love teaching so much, because I can really reach out to people there.
If I could just comment on one thing you mentioned, it's that has shaped us, all those experiences. And, from middle school or elementary school. And I remember that quite well, even though it only took one teacher, that believed in me and helped me when I couldn't speak English, and all of those things, to graduate school where the other students didn't want me to join their group because I was a woman. And then, of course, after the first mass transfer exam, they really wanted me to work with them after that. So I think all of those things have shaped us so that we are passionate about helping people reach their full potential. And it really, boils down to that there's a passion in us. And this includes, the white American young men and women that have other challenges, even though they may not be of our demographic. So reaching your full potential, the more people that do that, the better off it is for everyone. And I think people like us who have had this experience really know that very viscerally. So there's a real passion that sometimes comes out as a little craziness, but but it's an important thing that we bring to our students.
Actually, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, it's my office. If I could also add to that, my experience is a little bit different. I grew up in Chile. I did my undergrad in Chile. I was in my comfort zone. I knew everybody. I actually went to the one university in Chile and stayed there from my undergrad to my PhD. I knew every secretary and every janitor there. And then I decided to come to the US, where I was nobody. I didn't even have a credit score. I didn't even knew what a credit score was. I was nobody. I couldn't rent a car. I couldn't get a credit card. I couldn't get a house. So that was a very eye-opening thing for me, trying to understand what it means to start from scratch. And I wasn't starting from scratch. I knew how to speak English very okay. I could communicate. I could buy food and groceries and whatnot. But it gets you a perspective and some empathy to people that actually have to do this in a very more forceful way. And that you're much more than what you think. But for sure, the biggest challenge was that leaving my comfort zone, leaving my family, leaving my way of life. I think I miss being hugged and kissed for the first 6 months in the US, until I actually went to Mexico and had a line of friends that I just met the night before just hug me, because I was missing that part of my culture that here it's a little bit different. And the other thing that I was going to mention is that impostor syndrome that we all feel, regardless of our heritage. But I was feeling it double because my English was not the best at the beginning. So I felt dumb, and it was so hard to overcome that. Trying to convey with words that I'm more than my broken English was very hard. So whenever you face somebody that is not explaining themselves the best they can, give them a little bit of slack, because it could be they just don't find the words. But yeah, that was my little grain of salt.
Mr. Serrano, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes. My biggest challenge, excuse me, my parents, when they came here from Puerto Rico, they had second grade education. So, and it wasn't their fault. I mean, they did the best they could, but they didn't value education. Okay, so in our culture and in our neighborhood where we grew up, most of my friends went right to work from high school. Some of them didn't even go to high school because they, their family needed them to be major contributors financially. So I couldn't study at home. I remember sometimes, and again, because I refused to go right to work. I would study, and my mom would raise the music up. Okay, so what I ended up doing was I had to walk a few miles to the library. The local library used to close at 5 p.m. And so I walked up to the Temple Library that was a couple miles from my house. I ended up going there because they were open up late. They were open later. So that was a major challenge to try to navigate around that. And again, it must have been something inside me because I just knew. Well, I used to work with my dad in the summer, and they used to landscape and really do hard work. So I knew that in order for me to get to where I wanted to go, that wasn't going to be the route to go, and education would be the way to go. It got so bad that when my parents broke up, So I literally had to leave school and go to work to provide for my family. And when they got back together, then of course they're back together. Here I am working. So I left the job, got my GED, and then applied to Temple. And then I had to learn, of course, I didn't have enough credits or the prerequisites for pre-med or medical technology that I wanted to go into. So I had to go do a year of chemistry and a year of physics at community college and go back, reapply, and then I was accepted. So that was a major challenge for me growing up to get. So that's why I say by the time I reached my field, I was pretty much prepared for whatever life had to offer.
So since we've discussed challenges, do you guys have any successes that you want to talk about in like your field?
I do. I was coming to the US for 1 year. That's what the professor that allowed me to come to his lab told me. He said, you are kind of funny, you're kind of interesting. I give you 1 year and then you have to find your own funding, which nobody, not even me, thought that I could do. So I said, I'm going to the US for 1 year. Let's enjoy it. But I got it. And here I am. So I'm very, very proud of that.
Eileen, you should talk about your funding when they gave you the money from in the other job, that scholarship, that grant.
I think just about every one of the projects I've been involved in has had a terrific success. And sometimes, terrific failures altogether. But I can't think of a single one where success, as defined by learning something important, hasn't happened. I've had projects talking about Chile, if I may, with a university in Chile, working to extract an antioxidant from algae that grows there. And this is called astaxanthin, and it can be used as an antioxidant and nutrient for salmon in salmon farming. And it also gives salmon that beautiful, pink orange color that we like, which salmon normally get from the food they eat. That's not naturally part of their biology. But when you farm salmon, there's not an opportunity for that to happen. So this is a great natural product. And I had the opportunity to work with small salmon farmers in Chile and the university. And that was just an incredibly successful and very rewarding project. I think my students are probably my biggest success. I have students that are doing all sorts of different things, including, getting PhDs at the University of Delaware and calling me to tell me that they passed their PhD qualifying exam with distinction. And my students are just my greatest success, and to see them flourish and develop. And if I may add, my two children.
Thank you, Zaneta, because you must read minds. It's our projects and obviously our students and yes, our families. Yes, absolutely. Related to that, the projects I have been able to do, I have a very unique. In anthropology, it's rare to get this, but you do get it, the opportunities here and there. You have to take the opportunities. It's very rare that you can start working in a museum and have access to peoples of the past. I mean, you're handling human remains that are 3,000, 5,000 years old. That's extremely unique. So for me, that's a success story to have been able to get the arrangements with the museum in La Serena and be able to bring my students. I've done in total 17 trips with students. And again, if we can get over this hump with the COVID, I want to get back over there to do this. So yes, my students, to be able to see my students thrive and the projects I've done with them, and then the publications we've got, because I've been able to publish with them and present at conference. We've traveled to different parts of the world to bring our work, I mean, it's a privilege to go with students. So definitely, yes. And from a professional point of view, absolutely. And the other successes is, yes, I agree totally with you, Zaneta, and everybody else. When it comes to children, humans can manifest themselves, express themselves in a variety of ways. There are many ways. Children are certainly not the only way. We know that. However, if we do have that opportunity to be able to raise children and raise them to fruition and with capabilities and obviously the compassion and understanding and honesty and all the good qualities, that is a success thing. That is is not easy to do, to raise. People think about raising children. It's not easy to raise children. In fact, I admire my children, my friends who don't have children, because they have other experiences. They have other wonderful, then they're not better or less, it's just different. But certainly I feel very successful because my son is about to earn his PhD in math from Temple University. And my daughter started at Rowan University this year, and I'm very proud of her. And just being able to raise them, to take care of them. One is a biological son, the other is an adopted, my adopted daughter, my biological son. But I say that because I'm very proud of those experiences. They were different experiences, but equally of equal love. And they're my children, our children. And we've raised them. And yes, to raise kids to be good human beings, because I told my children always, I want you to study, I want you to learn, I want you to expand your horizon, I want you to be open-minded, but also just be a good human being and be true to yourself. I told that to my daughter at her graduation party. We had a graduation party, and I said, the best advice I can give you, Victoria, and they give this to all my students, is to thine own self be true. Follow your dreams, follow yourself, follow your own self, and don't let anybody detract you from that. So that's definitely that. But yes, my students from the Rowan University experience, from my professional anthropology, it's great. Tonight I agreed to get students call you back and say, yeah, I made it through my PhD. And we've had that. I mean, I'm elated, it's like, that's a success. That's definitely.
Absolutely. And if I may just add, one of my greatest success was students looking me up and funding a project for me.
Right.
Right. So they're in a position where we can do a project together and they can fund it from their company. So those are incredible successes, and from a professional standpoint, but also very rewarding.
Yeah, very rewarding. Absolutely.
If I can just add to that, one of my accomplishments that I'm most proud of, as you guys mentioned, is my marriage and raising my children. I mean, I couldn't be prouder of them, and they don't really. And I mention it to them all the time, that how much they actually raised me. When I get compliments about how well we raised our children, I really always say they actually raised me, because when you have these these precious lives in your hand, it's a two-way street. It's just not one way, you dictating to your children and not getting the feedback. So I learned that. I learned early that you kind of meet them where they are, and kind of you have to hold yourself accountable, right? Because you're telling them to do things, but what are you doing? Because they're not going to do what you say; they're going to do what you do. So that was one of my something that I'm proud of looking back. The other one in business is actually creating a process where I get in trouble for it now with the doctors, but actually holding some of the medical professionals accountable. Because in medicine, there's no real accountability. You go to a doctor's, they give you a prescription, they get paid whether you get better or not. There's no accountability. So in the field, I deal mainly with nursing homes and the elderly. I just have kids and elderly. I just have an affinity for them. And so what I noticed was that the doctors literally would just drive through and see patients. I mean, because the patients in the nursing home is an interesting dynamic. The patients belong to the home, and the doctors are subcontractors. So they some of them literally double park and run through and see patients. So that bothered me, because I'm in the nursing home sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning. I mean, I work around the clock. So I had to come up with a way to make sure that these patients were receiving quality care. And I was able to do that through my software, when a medication is prescribed that should be accompanied or monitored with blood levels, what I did was I just married the two information together. So when the doctor's looking at the results, he sees both. He doesn't have to go into a different area. Oh, this patient is on Coumadin. Let me check the blood study for it. And the reason why they were missing things is it was because the information wasn't presented to them in a way that they're able to make a decision real time. It was always reactive. There was no proactive. So being able to do that, I was able to really show the medical directors. I meet with the doctors quarterly, and I show this report. In the beginning, they weren't too happy with me, but it's the data. It didn't lie. It showed that you were getting paid to take care of this patient and keep their quality of life at a certain level, and you didn't do that. And this patient was healthy enough to receive the treatment and actually have a better quality of life. But because no one was holding them accountable, this went on for a while until the nursing home started using our program, and we were able to improve the quality of health. So that's one thing I'm proud of. Another thing I'm proud of.
Okay, well, if no one has anything else to add, I think we have time for one final question. So are there any expectations you had in your career past that you found that differed from reality?
Yes, for sure. Not everybody can cure cancer, and not everybody can win the Nobel Prize. I entered biology thinking that I was going to do both if I just worked very hard. And soon enough, I learned that you need to do your job the best that you can so you can contribute that little bit that is going to help the next person. So basically in science, and I guess everybody will agree that it's in every field, you are just a little part of the big scheme. And even if you get to be the last one that shines on top of the mountain, you have to acknowledge all the people that came behind you. And if you're the first one who is building the mountain, be sure that your foundation is going to support this big tower. In my case, I was the first one doing spinal cord injury in Chile. I had no idea what I was doing. Nobody knew what I was doing. Nobody knew that. But what I left there is a line of research that now is starting. And what I gain here is all the research behind me that is helping me to advance. So be sure that you're part of the link.
So I am a scientist. I'm a biological anthropologist. So a lot of my work is obviously it's hypothesis testing, theory building. I have to work with all of that. When I started this in anthropology, I just never realized the amount of time it would take to do this work. Enormous amount of time. I mean, the things that I published take years. I just finished publishing 2 chapters in a book with a friend where we went to Egypt. We studied in Egypt, human remains. It took us 6 years just to get those chapters going, just to publish them. And the article is virtually done. We're going to be sending it off to publication. It's just the amount of time. So if anybody's going to be a scientist, and you have to be ready to fail and not, and take, and just say, okay, I'm going to do it again, because I've had articles rejected. Had articles sent back to me and said, nope, the math is wrong. You got to go back and do it all over again. And be ready to accept that and be humble in the face of that, because you're all excited. Oh, I found something. And then boom, so you can't be proud. At least I'm proud of my achievements, of course, and my family is too, and blah, blah, blah. But you have to be humble in the face of being wrong. You have to be able to be wrong and say, yep, I messed up now. And they're telling me, it's not a lie. They're telling me, and being able to rise from that, fall in the hole, come back out again and say, okay, now I did it right. That's good. And contribute, even if it's just a little bit. So yes, that definitely.
In what I do every day, I am one invention or one calculation away from being wrong in what I am doing today. And that is always there. And to really have comfort in that and to find that exciting and challenging, because even if you're wrong, you're contributing. It's like, Thomas Edison said that, he tried 500 times and he failed, and now he knows 500 things that don't work, so he does something else. So the whole idea that all results are good results, positive and negative results, to have perseverance, to take your work very, very seriously, but yourself not so much, so that you can truly enjoy what you're doing, so you can fail with grace, and which I've done more often and learned more from that than from anything that has gone well. I think those are very, very important things. And then whatever you do, to really check in with yourself periodically and make sure that you really like it, that you're even downright passionate about that. Because if that's the state where you are, then whatever work you're doing is not just a job. And I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunity to live that way and to have a profession that has allowed me that.
Zaneta, if I may, I very much appreciate that too about, if you enjoy working, right? Because I'm always telling myself the day I have to start working, I'm quitting. In other words, to me, this is still that adventure. It's still that adventure. I enjoy so much that it's not work for me. I mean, yeah, we have to do certain things. As chairperson, I'm finding out more. I mean, I've been chair before, but I'm finding out now things change every year. The amount of paperwork, right? You know that anybody who did the amount of paperwork, that's work. But the day that I really have to work, that's the day I will retire. And it's gonna happen.
If I may add just one more thing that I don't know if it's completely related to your question, but it came to my mind. Also, don't be afraid to change if what you're doing is not filling your heart. I was lucky that I found my passion right away. But for example, my husband, he was down the PhD path, and in the middle, he decided that it was not for him. It was killing him. It was eating his soul, and he dropped it, which is something that you don't do. You don't drop a scholarship in the middle of your PhD, but he did it. And he found his passion, and he's working in clinical trials now, and he's very successful. So don't be afraid to be that person. If it's not filling your heart, change. Nothing bad is going to happen from that.
I could not agree more. And this is especially true when you're young. Sometimes students will say to me, oh, I just don't know what I want to do. That's such a terrible thing. No, it's not. When you're young, that is the right time to explore, to try different things, to not be afraid to change. And that is very, very important to really think about.
Yeah.
Mr. Serrano, do you want to add something?
Yes, I'm playing with these buttons here, trying to unmute. Yeah, I agree. Great points. I think it's so important, as someone mentioned, that you be true to yourself, your authentic self, because you really, that's the foundation of who you are. And so you really have to be honest with yourself. So that in doing that, then there's no distractions. You're not deceiving yourself, but it's so important to be honest with yourself. And as someone mentioned, not take yourself so seriously. Be honest with yourself. Be true to be your authentic self, because that's the best person you can possibly be, and work hard.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Serrano, that you say the authentic self, because I feel after teaching so many years and working on research with students and colleagues, there are times where people are not permitted to be authentic, and that is really terrible. And so we're still navigating waters today of not only, and I hear it from my students, because my students talk to me. We discuss all these issues. I want to be my authentic self, whether it be that they're in the LGBTQ community, or whether they have some medical issue, well, which obviously I won't share with anybody if they share anything like that, or anything. It's private, but they will share these things. And I say, well, you have to be authentic to yourself.
That's
You
right.
have to live an authentic life. And we're not permitting our society simply in many parts of society, we simply do not allow people to be their authentic self. And that is costing us emotional energy. It's costing us in the form of suicide. It's costing us in the form of productivity. It's costing us in all kinds of things. And you can ask I'm not a sociologist, although sociology and anthropology share quite a bit, but that's what my sociologist friends tell me. There is a heavy cost out there for not letting people, not supporting them and being who they are, to support them to be followed. And we should provide the resources. We need to be, as whoever we are, we need to prepare those people, any people, the students, whoever they are, and support them in their goals so they can be authentic in what they do and be authentic to themselves and not be ashamed or afraid to be who they are. So I can't tell you, for example, how many times I have students in the LGBTQ community who talk to me and they say, well, I want to go into this field, but I don't know how I'm going to be viewed. And I say, go for it, do it. Don't stop. Just do it. Don't let anybody detract you from that. So I think the biases and the bigotry out there and also racism that is still very much alive. I grew up in the 70s in Patterson where we dealt with those issues. Well, it's been 50 years I've been in the US. And guess what? In my experience, they haven't changed very much. They've just been hidden a little bit more here and there. And so we have a great opportunity with the younger generation, and anybody, to really help them be who they are and follow what they need to do without chastising them for who they are, which is what we've been doing a lot of.
And if I may add, Maria, the truth is that no one can reach their full potential if they don't bring their whole self to whatever it is that they're doing.
Absolutely.
But I think it's really important, to look at the systemic problem, the discrimination, the challenges and the barriers, and we need to work on those, and we can't deny those. There's one more thing, though, that I think people, you're not going to know what your authentic self is if you don't listen and pay attention.
Absolutely.
And I think in a world where we have constant stimulation, where there's this constant collection of likes on social media, and not that there's anything necessarily wrong with those venues, but I think we need to stop and really listen and be aware and pay attention. How do you feel about things? What do you physically feel when you enter this meeting or this class? And to really be aware of your reactions and your responses so you can find your authentic self. And then once you do, you stand and you fight in every way that you can to make sure that your authentic self is able to come with you and to be what you bring to the table. But you really need to know what that is. And I really encourage my students to take the time to do that.
Yep, I agree. That's what we do.
At risk to sound a little bit cheesy, if you cannot find the role model, be the role model. Right. That's what somebody told me when I was dealing with my duality of being a mom and being a scientist in the beginning of my career. And I said, I don't know how moms do it. Well, you figure out and tell the others.
That's right.
Yep. Good stuff.
All right, I think we are finished. We're about to be finished. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, bueno. I want to thank all everybody who been part of this roundtable. I want to thank very much my moderator, Jada and Chandler. Thank you so much. You did an amazing job. I know this was our first time. And I want to thank all the guest speakers, Dr. Rosado, Dr. Gephart, Eileen, and Mr. Steven Serrano. for all your experience. I am sure our students and our community is going to enjoy to listening all what you have given us information on all your experience. And I feel that very reflects on many of the things that you've been talking, especially to being from Chile and coming to this country as an older person, not older, younger than now, but a long time ago already, 20 years ago. And I want to leave you right now for our principal, Mrs. Kelly Mackenzie. She's going to talk a couple words and close this roundtable.
Thank you very much, Paulie. She's been integral, as has Ms. Serrano, in organizing this effort for our students, our families, and also our greater community. So in Gloucester Township, we're home to a diverse student population, I think. Our Hispanic students make up roughly 12% of our learning community at Timber Creek and contribute greatly to our educational heritage generally. The faculty and staff who lead our world language program enrich the lives of our students through their commitment to culture, the mastery of the language, and exposure to global opportunity. Paulie is just one example of many members of the staff that we have that accomplish this task every day with our students. So each year, we are thankful to be able to observe National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th through October 15th with a month-long celebration with morning announcements, cultural signage around the building, and effective and meaningful programs such as this one. So I am thankful for all of the panelists for their words of wisdom, encouragement, and also just gracious stories of success to all of the stakeholders in our community. But I'm also thankful to our student moderators for their leadership and their female empowerment, and they are fantastic. So I greatly appreciate them as well. And I hope that our community can gain access to a lot of important information and awareness just through the panel discussion on this evening. So stay charged up to get access to all sorts of diverse aspects of culture throughout the year. This is one of many examples of the type of awareness opportunities we'd like to bring to our community at Timber Creek.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everyone.